Welcome in, folks. My name is Dr. Shawn Smith, and tonight we're talking about stress. Let me ask you something. Would you accept, would you rather reject $10 million if taking it meant living your entire existence incredibly stressed out, always overthinking, always in worry, always in anxiety? Would you leave $10 million on the table if you knew that taking it would leave you so psychologically compromised, so riddled with tension every day of your life? Is that worth taking that 10 million? This is a question I asked a small group the other night, and resoundingly, like, the answer was, of course I would leave the $10 million right there on the table. I wouldn't take it. The stress isn't worth it. But it makes me ask a question. It makes me ask a question. If handling stress is worth millions of dollars to us, why don't we do more to ensure that we are big enough to conquer it whenever it arises? But beyond that, this conversation is really about dealing with stress in the here and now. On a personal note, I just learned that a project that I wanted to start, that I wanted to develop, is going to be significantly more difficult than I had previously imagined. And not only that, the consequences for failure are dire. So there could be some stress, no matter what walk of life or how much training you've done. I mean, it's there still can be some stress. You dig what I'm saying? So when you start to feel that tension in the neck, and when it starts to feel like there is no end in sight, when it starts to feel like, oh boy, I don't know if I what else can I do, right? When it starts to get to that level of tension, when it starts to get to that level of anxiety, ooh, ooh, that means we can look at that stress as a signal to do what? To return to our true self, to return to our root. It got so crazy. I got an email from one of you all this week. Sky's in the building. What's happening, Sky? So I got an email from somebody this week, and they were like, "Hey, you doing all right?" Right, the kind of content that I make tends to attract people who are empaths, people who would otherwise be called psychic, right? And so somebody was just checking in on me, and so I want to say thank you to that individual. You know who you are. But this person was checking in, and they were almost right on the nose, like, "Oh, I was having a week. I was having a week." Once I found out my project was going to take longer than I wanted it to, perhaps be more expensive than I wanted it to, mm, I started getting to that. I started getting more and more into the person and more away from that divine essence. Now, remember, if everybody, anyone really, would not take the 10 million in order to be, in order to, if it meant living their life in stress, present company included, right? I wouldn't do that. And so the ability to be in peace then is a treasure that's worth millions of dollars by my own admission and by your own admission. And so to think and believe that overthinking is somehow going to If we can just think for 5 minutes longer, or think for 10 minutes longer, or just lock myself in a room until I come up with a plan, is all of that overthinking, is all of that reactive tension, is all of that worth your multi-million-dollar treasure? It's actually worth far more than that, but peace, your multi-million-dollar treasure. You would reject the 10 million if it meant peace in your life, which means that the peace must be more valuable than the 10 million. So then why, I could ask myself, why entertain even 5 minutes of stressful thinking, as if that stressful thinking is going to lead to a solution that is actionable, that isn't fear-based? Ooh, as if that stressful thinking is going to lead to a solution that is actionable and that is not fear-based. That's a fairy tale. Solutions born of stress, born of I just hurry up and I gotta hurry up and do this, they tend to be laced with fear, which means they're already compromised. Because you can't be sure if that fear is taking you into a direction that you actually want to go, or just a direction that's more comfortable. You cannot be sure if that fear is taking you in a direction that you actually want to go versus a direction that's just a little bit more comfortable. In other words, is it moving you toward, is the solution actually moving you toward the life that you want, or is it just moving you towards something that's going to feel a little better? This is the issue. Sky's saying, I feel that something. I just don't know how to change it. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're going to get there. Let's take our time with this. I do not plan on being on live long tonight, but I do want to take my time with this one. Because if you know, as I asked to that small group the other night, if that 10 million, you would leave it on the table in order that you actually live a life of peace, calmness, tranquility, stillness. Even if there's myriad activities going on, you know that you are connected to your center. You know this. I'm here to tell you there are people with $10 million who would gladly give that up. There are people with 100 million who would give up 10 million if it meant a life of everlasting peace and bliss and joy. Are you serious? There are people who are not just billionaires, but multi-billionaires who would gladly, 10 million of them is like 10,000 to you or $100 to you or $10 to you, right? So yeah, I think I'll give that up for the peace and bliss. Why is that? Because we can get the money back. No, we can get the cash back. But this peace and bliss, you can't get another minute back that you just spent stressed. But of course, obviously, once you return to your root, you realize that time is an illusion anyway, and so you don't need the minute back. But you're not thinking that way when you're stressed, of course. When you're stressed, you're stressed. You dig what I'm saying? And it can tear you apart. And so there can be these moments where you're going to have to face the anxiety, face the tension, face the resistance. What is stress, by the way? It's a resistance. A resistance to what is, a resistance to the way things appear to be to you at this moment. And so there's a reason in transcendent psychology, there's a reason when we talk about taking spiritual responsibility, there's a reason that I say return to your root, which is to say return to God, which is to say to return to awareness. In this understanding, when you are in awareness, you're in higher consciousness. When you are in awareness, you are in higher consciousness. It's the same thing. Consciousness and awareness, same thing within this lexicon. And so there's a reason that that's the case. For me today, it was this morning. I go into the chambers to meditate, and something became very, very clear. Returning back to awareness. The conscious transformation technologies that get us back into awareness are so profound because they do a couple of things. Number one is they allow us to block out all sense perception. So I'm no longer paying attention to what I see, hear, taste, smell, even what I think or can touch. So now we're back in this awareness, blocking out all sense perception. The second thing is that when awareness is all I'm paying attention to, I can see its qualities. I can see its qualities. Having seen the qualities, I can embody the qualities. So here's what I mean. Sky, we're about to get to that point right now. If you close your eyes with me right now, if you just close your eyes, that awareness that is aware of the darkness behind your eyes, ask it, what kind of day did you have? I mean, what kind of day did you, awareness, have today? What kind of day did awareness have today? It's such a important question. Because if you can recognize that awareness that is aware of the darkness behind your eyes, that is aware of the sound of my voice, that awareness, it did not have a bad day. It has never had a bad day. It's never had a hard day. Awareness simply is. It's just aware. It's just aware. It's never found out that a project was going to be too big for it to handle. It's never gotten a divorce. It's never had somebody pass away on it, right? The stories that we have about our trials and tribulations, though we do want to acknowledge them, we recognize that they pertain to the person we think we are. The point of awareness, conscious transformation technologies, or coming back and returning to your root, is that we're taking that identity of the person and we are expanding it. Because we know that if a person passes away, someone dies of a heart attack, you can see their body. You can still see their race, their ethnicity, their gender, all of those things, but you say that person is gone, right? Because we understand that the outer shell is merely an outer shell. There is something that animates that individual on the inside. What is that? What is that which makes someone conscious? If we return to that very consciousness, we see that, oh, okay, the consciousness does not have a bad day. Awareness does not know a bad day, which means that it's always at peace. And so if I am that awareness, that consciousness, and if you are that awareness, that consciousness, when you say you're stressed, who is the you are talking about? Who is the you are talking about? You mean you, the person with a name, who's here for 100 years and then up out of here? Whose problems by definition have to pass? Cannot stay because that person cannot stay. The person comes and goes, is born, has a life, and then expires? The person is an appearance in awareness, but the awareness is always here, regardless of if the person is or not. In other words, when you go to sleep at night, the person that you believe you are right now disappears for you. And you're in a new avatar, a whole new experience that you believe is real at the time of the dream. At the time that you're dreaming. The awareness is still there though. And no matter if you're getting traced by dragons and dinosaurs inside the dream and ponies with horns, regardless of any of that, the awareness sees it all, just as awareness is seeing all of this and is completely itself, completely at peace. Why not just live from there? Especially if the alternative is to run into all of these little problems that by definition are fleeting, but that feel like they're going to last forever. They feel permanent when you're in them. They feel like if you don't solve it right now, it's not going to get solved. So the point of this is that when we are in awareness, we can actually experience peace. Because awareness is that peace. In other words, the peace is actually who we are at the deepest level. The peace is who we are at the deepest level. I have to make believe, I have to pretend, I have to go into fantasy land in order to experience stress. But I only need to return to myself, my true self, in order to experience the peace that is everlasting, the peace that delivers me from the perception of stress itself, from the perception of stress itself. Sky, let me come back to you. Is that making sense? Shango in the room. Welcome in, Shango. Want to make sure that's making sense to Sky. You see, this idea of returning to awareness, it also means that awareness is not hungry for a goal. It's not measuring itself by its own ambitions. Is not expecting a return in the future for its present efforts. And so therefore is never disappointed. Now that awareness is you. You know it because without it, you wouldn't be. Sky saying yes. Sky saying thanks. I needed to hear that. Wonderful, Sky. Without that awareness, of course, you wouldn't be able to enjoy this conversation. You wouldn't be able to. There would be no you here to experience the conversation. So the awareness is always there. That awareness is who you are. It's the entertaining of the expectations, entertaining the idea that, oh boy, I've got these ambitions I got to satisfy. And as an ambitious person, I can tell you that is like the issue. As an ambitious person, in other words, as an ambitious ego, I can tell you that's one of my situations. That measuring yourself against what you can accomplish trying to hold expectations of future gains based on, or measure expectations of future gains based on the activities of today, what's that sound like? That sounds like, oh, I should already have that. I already put in the work. I should already be at this level. I already put in the work. I should already do this. I should have already had. That's what that sounds like. And so when you're given the opportunity to get what you think you already should have had, and find out that it's going to be a little bit more work than you thought. Oh, stress. Based on a story that isn't ultimately real. What is ultimately real? Only awareness, only consciousness, ultimately real. It's the only thing that's going to be here long after humanity even passes from the scene. Long after there are no longer, long after there's an earth, a place called Earth, there's awareness. There's consciousness. Across cosmos, across dimensions, across galaxies. So if it is the only true reality, why spin even a moment engaged in fantasy? The appearances are fine. Whatever is appearing for you is fine. It makes no difference whether or not you are literally on a war ground, a battle zone, like actual physical combat. The appearances, or by contrast, if you were confined to a bed, the appearances are appearances. They appear in awareness, much like your dreams do, much like this experience right now is appearing in awareness. Where we need help, however, is in returning back. We are taught from an early age to think of ourselves, one, as individuals. Go back and watch the 10 Principles of Transcendent Psychology, last week's video. We're taught from an early age to think of ourselves as individuals. And to move into the world, move in the world as if we are persons on a mission. And some of that's good, as long as it doesn't become the dominant identity. As long as the person doesn't become the dominant identity. When there is more person than there is God, then there is awareness, higher consciousness. When I say more person, I mean that when there's more ego, the more sense of little tiny me or tiny you that wants all of these things and is coming up against all these little obstacles, big or small, they're all little obstacles, and is experiencing the resistance to those obstacles because, in this case, tiny you or tiny me does not want to, doesn't want to deal with those obstacles, and frankly, sometimes doesn't believe it can, having lost sight of who you really are. And so the benefit of coming back to and returning to root awareness is that not only are we shutting off and getting time to de-stress and all of that, but we're watching its qualities. We are taking on the qualities of awareness. What are its qualities? Shut your eyes one more time. And I would say even clasp your hands together like this. So you open your eyes for a second and then clasp your hands together and shut your eyes. The awareness that is aware of the darkness behind your eyes and the awareness that's aware of the feeling of your hands clasped together. Investigate its qualities. Investigate the qualities of that awareness. Notice one, that it is aware, that's for sure. You can see the dark behind your eyes. You can feel the hands clasped together. You understand that awareness has been here the entire conversation. It is not anxious. It is not in a hurry. It is not upset. It has never been harmed. It does not leave because it does not get its own way. It does not abandon you. It cannot abandon you. It is open to every single thought, negative or positive, that can exist in your mind. It is open to every single thought that can exist and will ever exist in your mind. It is open to every emotion, from the deepest, darkest depression to the most ecstatic joy. It is not judging your emotions, nor is it judging your thoughts, nor is it judging you or anyone you've ever met. Notice this. What would it look like if awareness were to attempt to judge another person? That doesn't make sense. Awareness is simply aware of another person, just as awareness is simply aware of you, of your body. In fact, from the perspective of awareness, both the other person's body and your body they're both appearances. Both the other person's body, or the image that you say is the other person's body, and the image that you say is your body are both appearances that appear in awareness. It has no judgment for anything, and therefore can be called, what would be the word for that? Can be called what would you call that? That which, what would you call, what's the one word that you could call that which has no judgment? That which is forever at peace. What would you call that? Somebody put it in the chat. What's the one word you might call that? What's the one word? Oh, yes. You would call that love. You would call that love, that non-judgmental, open acceptance. Awareness holds space for all things, negative or positive. The label of negative or positive comes from a person with a perspective, with values that it's judging the world against. Awareness does not judge you for your values, nor does it judge you for judging others with your values. It is simply open, allowing all things to come and go. And for this reason, we can say that it is open acceptance itself. That's the very definition of what we can call higher love. And so as a result of that, when we're talking about dealing with stress, when we're talking about dealing with situations that can be overly abusive or overly, where we're overthinking constantly, I encourage you to return to this piece of awareness, the qualities of awareness, which includes peace, love, joy. Simply notice how awareness, which is you, the true you, simply notice how it is responding to circumstances, how it is responding to that project that looks like it's going to be too big, how it is responding to needing to do more, wanting to add more to its schedule, not feeling like it's doing enough. How does the awareness respond to that? If you look closely, you find that the awareness is simply open for it. It's not stressed about it, not upset about it, not tense about it. Knows that whatever happens, it will be unaffected. There's a reason that the Tao Te Ching, which I regard as one of the most profound books ever written, there's a reason that the Tao Te Ching says, what difference is there between success and failure? Whether you go up the ladder or down the ladder, situations always have consequences. There's always a moment, an opportunity for rebirth. The dynamism is still there. Every success can lead to greater success or failure. Every failure can lead to greater success or failure. It makes no, what's the difference? Particularly, what's the difference to awareness? And awareness is just another name for the Tao in this understanding of transcendent psychology. Awareness is just another name for the Tao. What difference is there to awareness in regard to success or failure? To awareness, winning the lottery is just as much of an appearance, something that comes and goes, as clouds across the sky. A reflection across the lake. Or night rotating into day. Simply an appearance. Having embodied the qualities of awareness, what happens is that you don't get so caught up and hyped up on your highs, nor do you get too bogged down in the quagmire of lows. So you're not too hyped up and you're also not too bogged down by lows. You could say that you have peace because you know that you are following in the footsteps of God. In the Christian church in the United States, people often say, "More of you, less of me, Lord." Or they say they want to be just like Jesus. And what they mean by Jesus is the Christ, which is higher consciousness, the symbolic representation of higher consciousness, right? That's the Christ symbol. More of me, less of you. In other words, to embody the very qualities of God. The very qualities of God, which include the openness to all things. It's simply aware. Awareness is simply aware of all things in your experience. It is not judging itself nor other people or any person. It's simply open. The idea of judge not. Difficult for a person, very easy for awareness. Difficult for a person, very easy for awareness. Awareness is not judging. Awareness is not holding expectations and thus never faces disappointment. That is not to say that you shouldn't have goals and be ambitious and do all of these things. It means do not allow your ambitions to override the truth within you. That's a good way to, one, not make it to the ambition, not make it to the finish line, or two, because you burned out, or two, make it to the finish line and then not know what it was all for. Both of those are terrible situations. From the perspective of the person who's experiencing them. From the perspective of awareness, of course, there's always an opportunity to return to this openness. There's always an opportunity to return to this openness. This is the beauty and this is the joy. This is the beauty and this is the joy. And so, as we deal with all of that anxiety that is flooding your experience, I cannot tell you how important it is to not only try to meditate, but also to return to that root source and witness its qualities. Simply witness its qualities. The beautiful part is that the qualities are already in you, experiencing and representing themselves all day long, without pause. The qualities of open awareness are always there. The issue happens when we have all of this open awareness and then we start picking out and segmenting components of our experiencing and saying, I don't like that part, or I don't like that part, I don't like that part, and then holding on to that tension as if the I don't like that part was even true. What part are you talking about? What part are you talking about? And from what perspective are you talking? Because from the perspective of awareness, all of experience is a common whole. Awareness is not drawing a dividing line between you, your physical body, and another person's body. They are one in awareness. How's that? Because without the awareness, both disappear. If you were not aware right now, both your body, the physical body that you claim is yours, and somebody else's physical body that you claim is theirs, they both disappear. Like in deep sleep when there are no dreams. Everything disappears. Which means that when everything reappears, it reappears within something. We call that something consciousness or awareness. And from its perspective, all of reality is a single whole, and all of it belongs to itself, belongs to awareness. Does that mean that all of your issues disappear? And that you no longer have to face the dragons that you were stressed out about in the first place? Let me say this clearly. It only means that you realize that your dragons, so to speak, that you were so stressed out about, were paper dragons. They're just paper dragons that you know that they cannot last forever. You know, if you got a car note that's due, it's overdue, they about to repo the car, you know that experience, however bad, is going to come and go. Or maybe it never comes at all. But you're not going to be dealing with it forever. This too shall pass. I've heard wise ones say before, this too shall pass. But we can lose that perspective entirely if we are failing to pay attention to that which does not pass. Even in deep sleep, awareness is still there. How do you know? Because you know that there are moments when you are not dreaming. You know that there are moments when you are not dreaming, nor awake. You're aware that when you go to sleep, there seems to be this hyper compression of time, this gap where you close your eyes you've had the experience of closing your eyes for 5 minutes and then you wake up and it's 10 hours later. You may not have known where you went, but you knew that you were gone, right? There was an awareness there that there was a gap. There wasn't any signposts. There were no buildings or other people or stories for your mind to latch onto. So you can say you don't remember what happened. But there was still an awareness that sleep had occurred, that you were out. In other words, that you were having an experience where there was neither thought nor imagination at work. But there was awareness. So we return back to awareness and we return back to its core qualities. We return back to its core capabilities, its ability to stay present in all situations. It doesn't matter if the heartbeat is doing all of this, if it's super stressed about what's going to happen. You either survive or you don't as a physical entity. Is awareness upset at that? Is awareness concerned at that? Will it be harmed? just because the physical body disappears? Of course not. Of course not. And so I think some people may need that unpacked. I've decided that, I bought in a copy of Spiritual Responsibility, of course. Of course. And on page 87, I think there are some people who are so new to this that the idea of awareness being something that is eternal is foreign to them. The idea of awareness being something that outlasts the physical body is foreign to them. In other words, if awareness is merely a product of the brain, for what reason would we place so much faith and hope in it? For what reason would we somehow suggest that it was divine? I mean, if it's just a product of the brain, again, this goes back to our conversation about Western psychology. Okay, you can check that out in the 10 Principles of Transcendent Psychology video from last week, or from last week, actually. They could ask the question, so for what reason would we claim that awareness has all of these special abilities? I mean, why are you putting so much in awareness? I mean, isn't awareness just something that's happening inside your head? And that when the person dies, awareness has to die with it? Yeah, isn't that the case? I actually want to handle that right now. I'm doing so on page 87 of the book. I'm not going to read to you the entire book. Miriam Starr, this too shall pass. Absolutely. 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 Welcome in, Miriam. This too shall pass. And we can say that when we are grounded the right way. Sky saying hit the like button. Oh yeah, for sure. Hit the like button for sure, Sky. I like that. I appreciate that. Okay. So again, right now I'm taking a moment. We've been talking about being stressed. We've been talking about being so doggone stressed out that you can't think straight. And by the way, let me just say that too. You can get so stressed out that you cannot think straight. For people who perhaps tonight is your first night in the room with me, I'm on this experiment, right? I've got this experiment going where I only do what I love, right? That's the experiment. I just want to see what happens. If love is, as I believe it is, the highest intelligence in the universe, because it is coterminous with God itself, then to follow love is to follow God. This is the idea. And so I'm only doing that which I love, or doing my best at doing that. And what can happen is that the stress of, oh boy, I really love doing this thing, but I think I need to make this particular decision right now in order that I can do this thing with, as much as I like, right? So for some people, that would include going and getting a job. Some people are working at jobs right now, In order to do the experiment that I'm doing, I cannot do that, right? I can't go get a job because that's not in my love. That isn't it, right, for me. So I wouldn't do that. And so if you were to do the same experiment and you were currently at a job that you didn't like, you would have to leave right now. Like yesterday would have been your last day, or today, the day that you just finished, whatever the case. You got to be done with that. Like that's the experiment. If love is the highest form of energy in the universe, then to follow it is to lead to my highest version of myself. You understand? And so this is the ongoing experiment. It just so happens that the only thing that gets in my way is my own lower belief, my own self-doubts, my own, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if? So you see, in that stress state, you can't even access that higher dimension of love. It gets harder and harder to hear the voice of God when you're constantly entertaining the lower voice of self-doubt, of stress. If y'all remember early in our deep dives last year, I believe, V was saying I had brought up this story about these two wolves, right? Let's call the two wolves love and fear. And the idea is that these two wolves are constantly fighting with one another, and it's like, okay, well, which one is going to win? The love and fear wolves, which one of these is going to win? Were you I don't know, somehow into wolf fighting or something like this? And it's an old proverb. This is not coming out of my brain, but the proverb ends with the difference between the wolves that will win, the one wolf that will win the entire battle, the wolf of love or the wolf of fear, is the wolf that wins is the wolf that you feed. Whichever one you feed more is the one that grows stronger and stronger and stronger. And so it is with these higher qualities of consciousness. That's why it's so important to return to awareness and constantly admire its qualities and seek to match your psycho-emotional experience to the qualities of awareness. That's where we've covered up to this point in the live. Okay, so that's basically our conversation. Now we're moving on to a conversation to answer the question of, well, why are we putting all this stock in awareness anyway? Like, how do you know that it's really eternal and all this? And so that's why I pulled up spiritual responsibility. Kamar in the building. This too shall pass, 100%. That's why I pulled up a copy of Spiritual Responsibility. I'm working from page 87. And inside of the book, on this page, as we handle the question, how do we know that awareness is divine? How do we know that it doesn't just pass when a person passes away? How do we know that we don't die? Well, what's interesting is that I talk about two different models. There's the awareness first model, which is where we say, actually, awareness is the only thing. If awareness wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to experience this, and neither would you. And so we should probably just reason from our first experience. It's the first line of empirical evidence that we can ever have. So I'm just going to reason from the place that already makes sense. You can't get away from awareness. If you were to get away from awareness, there is no more you left at all. That's awareness first. Very different. Very different. Most people operate from what's called the matter model. The matter model, the idea that we live in a physical universe, and the physical universe is comprised of a substance called matter, matter. The tiniest building blocks of that matter the primary building blocks of that matter are called atoms, which are comprised of subatomic particles, which are comprised of elementary particles. Right, this is the idea that there's actually hard stuff in the universe, and that it's mostly not conscious. And so from that perspective, that's the only perspective really that you could say, well, how do we know that awareness doesn't exist? Or how do we know that awareness is divine? How do we know? How do we know it just doesn't die? Somebody who's asking that question is still believing in a world of matter. And that makes sense because at the time of this recording, the time of this session that we're having right now, most of the world does. All of our elemental sciences, chemistry, everything is physics, everything's based on this matter model. And so when we look to understand what consciousness is inside of it, well, we come up with some very interesting conclusions if we're willing to look. And so that's what page 87 is really covering. Because I'm asking, what is awareness? Where do its elements come from after the death of the body? Like, So for instance, if you were a person who was like, how do we know awareness is divine? Okay. I need to start by asking you, what is awareness? What is it comprised of? And where do its elements go? Because we know that where do its elements go after the death of the body? Because we know that we are in a universe that can produce, by the way, we are just reasoning from the matter model. This is not the truth. This is just a way of explaining to the person who cannot see another way how awareness is eternal. Let me just say that. This is a way of explaining to the person who cannot see how awareness is eternal. This is a way of suggesting to that person that awareness is eternal. So we're going to use the matter model in order to explain to this individual who's like, I just don't see the point of awareness. We're just going to explain kindly to this individual to re-examine their core assumptions about reality. That's what we're going to do. That happens on page 87 and 86. I got 86 here too. So the first question is, what is awareness to this person, this imaginary person? I'm going to go into conversation with this person now. Where is awareness in the brain? And what happens to it after the body dies? Because we know that we exist in a universe that is capable of producing organisms that are aware. Correct? Evidenced by the fact that we are in the universe, having been created by this universe, and we are aware. That must be true. Right? That is an unassailable claim within the matter model. That whatever this matter is, it must at some point be able to reach a level of complexity such that it becomes aware. This must be the case. Unassailable claim. Based on all the available evidence, that must be true, right? So, okay. Well, thermodynamics holds the secret. Remember thermodynamics? Second law being entropy, but the first law being the idea that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So, thermodynamically, we know that we exist in a universe that is based on matter that cannot be created nor destroyed. Therefore, the matter is eternal. And that matter must be able to reach through processes of evolution, of organic maturity, of organic chemistry. It must be able to reach a level of complexity such that it produces life forms that are aware. Okay, very good. So thermodynamics holds the secret. That is, the universe, according to the Big Bang Theory, emanated from a single speck of matter. All life and objects originate from that single speck. When an organism dies, the amount of matter that constitutes its bodies, according to thermodynamic law, number one, still must be the same. In other words, were you to take your entire house and set it on fire and reduce it to a pile of ash, that'd be a lot of ash and it'd be a lot of smoke, because every single piece and particle of your home would still exist. But it exists in the smoke, in the ash, in the debris, you understand. The same is true with the decomposition of any physical organism, even in the matter model. It decomposes, sure, but it decomposes into something. It never goes away entirely. Okay. So still page 86. Even when the organism is completely decomposed, the matter that previously made up its body still exists in the universe. This is important. That matter can then be repurposed into other organisms, right? So maybe the plants. I mean, a good example is the Lion King, right? Remember when Mufasa's talking to Simba and he's like, oh, okay, well, when we die, our bodies become the grass, as in they decompose into the grass, they feed the soil, they become nutrient for plant life and for the organisms that surround and help decompose the body, and the bacteria that helps decompose the body. And then that grass becomes, right, a larger food source for bigger and bigger animals. I think we're understanding how this goes. And so the point is that matter never disappears, only changes forms, which means that the universe contains the ability to repurpose decaying flesh into new flesh in the matter model, to repurpose that which dies into something that is alive and vibrant. The dead body's heart, liver, and lungs get repurposed into energy for a newborn's heart, liver, and lung. On and on forever. The same must be true with awareness. The universe must contain the ability to create organisms with awareness, as evidenced by the fact that we are aware right now. But going even further, this means that the universe arranges matter in such a way as to generate the process, if you want to call it a process, that we call awareness. Which means that even when the organism that is aware decomposes, we know that the matter, the same matter that must be capable of creating awareness, we know that that continues to exist, which means so too does the capacity and capability of awareness. So too does the capacity and capability of the awareness. What am I saying? I'm saying this. This means that the universe arranges matter in such a way as to generate the process we call awareness, just like it generates the process that we call fire or human life. And if matter can neither be created nor destroyed, then, and we pretend that matter is the author of awareness, not the other way around, which of course is reality, but in the matter model, we pretend that matter comes first, then that would mean that the potential for awareness could neither be created nor destroyed. It would mean that the potential for awareness could neither be created nor destroyed. Because if matter can produce an aware organism once, and that matter is eternal, then that awareness that was once in that former organism, when it decomposes, must have the opportunity to be repurposed back into another organism that is also aware, sharing that same awareness. The matter, because it neither is never created nor destroyed, must be able to create these new organisms that are aware all of the time. And so if we can handle that part, then that would mean that dying from the standpoint of your consciousness is but a reorganization of resources. From the standpoint of awareness, it would mean that death and dying is but a reorganization of resources. It's only a matter of time before it's aware once again inside of a newly constructed body based on the matter paradigm. It's only a matter of time. As long as there are life forms that can be aware, then any dissolution of any life form, particularly when that dissolution of that life form gets reorganized by growing in new budding life forms, it's only a matter of time before new creatures that are also aware are in existence. And because all of the matter comes from the same spot, comes from that single speck, that means that it's all ever one. It's all one continuous matter body, so to speak. All matter is connected because it comes from a common source. The differentiation that we say that we think that we're seeing are labels that a human being projects onto its world. And so when we come to this understanding, just like when you go to sleep and awake as a new avatar in your dream world, at death, from the standpoint of your consciousness, you simply go to sleep to one world and wake up to a new one. Ours is not a universe where things disappear and die forever. And so, even for the person who's thinking only exclusively in terms of the matter model, that person must understand that matter, neither being created nor destroyed and carrying the capacity for awareness, represents that awareness in organic organisms of a certain sort, and continues that awareness as those organisms, generation by generation, pass away and rebirth themselves, and pass away and rebirth a new species, a new variation of themselves. But the matter and the awareness that that matter produces, so to speak, in this model is continuous. And so from the perspective of the matter model, both matter and awareness, consciousness, are continuous. As long as one exists, the other must have the capability of existing. As long as matter exists, the capacity and capability for awareness to exist must exist. This is not a universe where things disappear and die forever. That's thermodynamic law number 1. And so, because consciousness is our primary experience of reality, we are to, in my view, reject the matter model, or at least put it in its place, and return to this understanding of consciousness directly. Because we never experience matter, but we certainly experience awareness. In fact, awareness is the foundation for all experience. Without awareness, we would never know that there was anything called matter in the first place. I hope that's not too heady. I hope that's not too heady, but it's the reason that we come back to these qualities of awareness first. Because whatever awareness that you can say, okay, if you believe that you are a tiny person that comes and goes, that dies and has a life and does this whole thing, the mistake would be to believe that your awareness also dies. Because whatever gave you this awareness has the capacity to rebirth this awareness long after the body has decayed and decomposed. And so what we want to make sure we're doing is living our existence from the perspective of that aware presence. We want to make sure we're living our existence from the perspective of that aware presence, because it's our primary experience of reality. To do that, we return to our root and we witness the abilities of awareness, its capacity to simply allow things without judgment, its capacity to simply be aware of all things as if those things were only itself. Remember, if to awareness, your physical body and the physical body of someone else are the same. They both appear in awareness. Without that awareness, both disappear. Neither is more you or them. It's not you. It's not just them. It's one experience that happens inside of unified awareness. When we can return to that peace, that wholeness, we reestablish our integrity. And it becomes very easy to see that, oh, whatever little temporary situation that you have to deal with is but a little temporary situation. This too shall pass. As Miriam said, this too shall pass. As Kamar echoed, absolutely. This too shall pass. But what about that which doesn't? What about that awareness that doesn't pass? This was the revelation from my, this morning's work for me after I had got, was experiencing a certain, level of stress. Return to that root. Works every time. But it's so important because in our daily life, we're getting reinforced as if we are just people. We're getting all of this information, this noise. People are interacting with us as if we are just individuals with certain stakes, with certain political obligations, economic obligations. And we can forget in all of that hustle and bustle that we are the awareness that knows the appearance of economics, politics, family. We are the awareness that knows the appearance of these things. By the way, the matter model, it ends basically right there. Basically at the point where I'm on page 88. The matter model really doesn't offer us much in terms of awareness after that. After once we understand that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, and that it has the capacity to create organisms that are aware, and therefore, should those organisms pass away, the matter can still do the same thing of creating organisms that are aware, and that awareness that was once in one organism, its constituent parts, they get scattered and then repurposed once again in a new organism because they come from the same material source. In the matter model, this is not real, but this is the sort of way that I would explain it to a modern physicist who may call me crazy, whatever the case is. But the point is that we know for sure that the matter model does not take us further than that. We can arrive at thermodynamic law, but we can't arrive at what consciousness actually is. The reason is because it is not a thing. It is not in the brain. And so the point of this conversation is to begin to understand the matter model, to recognize it, to thank it for what it's allowed us to uncover thus far in the human experience, but now to move on to a new level, a new place, the awareness first model, where we recognize and experience consciousness directly and go directly to consciousness in order to deal with not only our psychological experience, but our empirical experience of reality. This is the point. And so that's a whole conversation for another day. That's a whole conversation for another day. But for today, in terms of dealing with whatever level of stress, it really doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. You could take the most stressful experience in all of the human kingdom and go to a person who is about to, about to start a war, somebody's about to kick off World War III, and they don't know if they want to do it, but they're about to press the button. And you could go to that person, and with all that stress, all that buildup that's happening inside of that person, based on all of their labels about the world, all their labels about what they ought to do, you could go to that person and literally ask, but what of your awareness? Somebody might laugh at you, but also you could literally ask, but what about your awareness though? Is it stressed? But what about consciousness though? Is it stressed? It makes no difference what you're going through. Who is the you that's going through it? It's not awareness. It is going through awareness. You see what I'm saying? It is an appearance that is happening in awareness. It will come and it will fade. The point of returning to awareness is to make sure we don't lose sight of that fact. And oh, by the way, in the meantime, to be able to experience the peace of awareness, because awareness is not resisting what comes. Awareness is not resisting what is. It's simply aware. And because we know that, we too can simply accept and acknowledge what is here. We can still take action and do the things that are necessary for us to achieve our goals without allowing the goal to supersede God, without allowing our ambition to trump our recognition of reality itself. So I encourage you to take time to sit with those eyes closed and pay attention not to perception, to what you're seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, but to the awareness that knows perception. Pay attention to that. Experience that, love. Pay attention to the awareness that is aware of your sight, your sound, your hearing, your tasting, your smelling. Notice that you cannot look at awareness. You can only be aware. And that's the point. Whatever you can find can be attacked. But awareness cannot be found, and so can never be attacked, cannot be approached, cannot be benefited or harmed. You cannot enhance your awareness. You can only drop the beliefs. That would suggest that you are nothing more than a person. Simply pay attention to that awareness. Notice its qualities. All things are welcome, without judgment. When things come, it does not celebrate. When things go, awareness does not cry. Awareness is peace itself for this very reason. And so are you. Rest in this awareness. this peace that doesn't move. Because awareness cannot be found. Awareness cannot be attacked or assaulted. And because awareness cannot be attacked or assaulted, you may call it invincible. And so are you. Bask in this awareness. This forever open, peaceful consciousness. This awareness that is forever in you because it is you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have enjoyed tonight, I want to say thank you. And I want you to know that whatever it is that you're dealing with that is appearing in awareness for you, this too shall pass. And you know it.